As a somatic embodiment coach, mother of a ADHD 9-year-old, and diagnosed at 40 myself person, I have something to say about um, mood changes and the therapeutic process with an ADHD person. So I'm going to try to do this without spiraling out, but that's the thing that can happen is the spiral out of what's really going on here? And I want to try to bridge a connection between somebody with ADHD's inner world and outer world, and ideally help you help yourself or help your kid or help whoever understand their own internal processes better. So my daughter will come home and she will say, Mommy, I don't have really any reason to cry, but I feel like I'm going to cry. And I will say, okay, great, cry. And I love her awareness of that because she'll say that I'm not really sad, but I have to. So I obviously explain to my kids like crying is moving energy, it's emotion, it's moving energy that needs to move. And I think that my old self, especially with my older children who they had every other weekend, they would go somewhere else. So I didn't have so much consistent awareness of their life. So I might have been like, oh, why are you sad? Like, let's look at this process. Like, what's going on to make you this way? And what I realize in working with my daughter, who's 9, is that to an ADHD person, their internal world changes. Sometimes they don't necessarily know why. Sometimes it's simply a transition. And the energy, you know, I can equate it to, when you're tripping and you're like at a party and you walk from one room to the next, and like one room's like really hopping and the next is like, you feel like you're in the middle of the night at a grocery store with a clock ticking. You're like, what is going on here? That huge contrast is what a transition can feel like to an ADD person. So when she comes home, there's this contrast of hyper focused and then quiet. And her body goes into like, all my hard work for the day is done. And now what? There's not like that much routine here for me. So when I hear her say these things like I am sad or not I'm sad, I have to cry, but I don't have a reason, or I'm not really sad. This is where we can get probably faulty with go if I would say to her, "Well, what happened?" And nothing really happened, or what is the trigger? What is the thing that started this cascade of emotionality? But the thing is, if somebody has a biological up and down wiring, if I continue to try to find out what happened to the outside world to stimulate that cascade in the inside world, I am re-eliciting a sense of conflict with the outer world to the ADHD person. And what I mean by that is if I would sit in front of my daughter and say, "Oh, honey, let's figure this out. What happened at school today? Oh, did your brother say something about..." If I dug for the trigger, I would give her reasons to have a trigger that might not already be in her head. She's very perceptive, right? And she could use any of them as an excuse. So sometimes I'll say, sometimes we don't have to have a reason that we feel a certain way. It's really interesting to go, okay, well, this is something that we actually just have to feel better, like get better at feeling instead of try to feel better, because you're going to have these experiences internally the rest of your life. And if every time you have that, I am staring in your face going, what happened? How can I help you? My face is going to become the problem. Because every time I come in, I'm going to elicit, oh, it must be something in the outer world making you feel like this. What's to blame? And not in a like blamey way, but how can we tackle this in the outer world? When it might really be that she simply needs to be responsible for her inner world. And if I continue to look for the trigger in the outer world that made her feel a certain way, it's like I can only imagine she might feel like she has to put bumpers on everywhere she goes, because she might be like, oh, it's the outer world making me feel like this, instead of, oh, this is what my human experience feels like in my inner world. So sometimes we can look for reasons and then like imprint those reasons, and then those reasons, although they might be valid, can become excuses. And then to the ADHD person, my kid could take that and run with it and hyper focus on it, be like, oh yes, this is why I'm feeling like this because he said that and now he should be punished, you know. But if we just acknowledge, so even yesterday she comes home from school and she says, mommy, like, I got to kind of get it out, you know. And immediately I can tell, like, I'm not gonna ask about her day. I was like, outside, run up and down the steps 16 times, just like, that's the directive, go do it. She comes back in, she's fine. And she actually did the directive, which is interesting. So now she knows, like, we're going to just move it through the body. We're going to shake it out. And we're not necessarily, we're going to have, because it's a little bit like when I ask her, well, what's going on that would make you feel like this in the outer world? I'm taking away her her potential for mindfulness for her inner world. And just fine line, there's always a time and place, right? I'm talking specifically about a person who's diagnosed ADHD, who I am learning from about inner and outer worlds, right? And that was a thing for me. Like, I was always like, my inner and my outer world don't match. I'm so confused, right? So I always had, and that's the other thing about my own diagnosis. Like, well, I had abuse in my life. I was constantly belittled. And now it's like, well, if you have ADHD and you're a difficult kid, you have a learning disability, and you have seizures, like, there's a lot. There's, you know, I could look at that and be like, a healthy parent would find that very difficult. I didn't have a healthy situation that wanted to make it better for me. So even being diagnosed at 40, I have this new, like, oh, if I would have known, if somebody would have taken the time to tell me what was going on with me and actually figure that out instead of just shame me and tell me, like, I was lazy and whatever, act like my seizures weren't happening, whatever, I would have felt more engaged in life and responsible for some part of what was going on in the outer world. And my issue is actually I always felt overly responsible for it. But my point is that I would have felt like, okay, I know where my edge is. I know what my part of the dance is. I wouldn't have always overextended myself. The reality is I have a disability. And actually it's really weird because, like, having grandma seizures my whole life, nobody ever treated it like it was a thing at all. It wasn't a disability. It wasn't. I would get picked up from school and my mom would be like, oh, I'm going to get fired because, you know, you have to do this thing again. Can you just not do this? There was not like, hey, how you feeling, you know? So I got to this point where I can talk to you because I was always kind of like, I searched my internal world to figure out what was wrong with me. I had no answers. And then it's like, okay, well, what's wrong with the system? Okay, now I can see, I have a lot of objective observation to say, like, okay, I can see what's wrong with the system. Well, maybe the system's to blame. And then I can go, oh, I am so hyper focused on how I orbited you instead of how you have elicited these responses out of me or made them worse. That was the thing for me. It's like I would be punished for having an emotional experience, whether it was good, bad, or anything in between. So I had a lot of reasons, right? And that's even when I got my official diagnosis and this chick is saying, like, oh, you have generalized anxiety disorder and depression. I'm like, no, dude, I don't. I have legitimate reasons. Doesn't that count? This is not like biological depression, right? But I wouldn't get to know the difference based on my life circumstance. And that's what I want for my daughter. I want my daughter to be able to know what is inside of her truly. And sometimes it might be empty space that only feels friction. It might not have cognitions attached to the empty space that feels. And if I put cognitions in her, oh, what'd your brother do? Oh, what'd your friend do? Then she's going to attach symbols that aren't presently there with that electric shock in her nervous system. And then she'll go, oh, you're the problem. You're the reason I'm feeling this way. Instead of going, oh, I'm feeling this way. And not in a I'm a problem and it's my fault sense, but in an, okay, this is within here, so I must be able to find my edge and contain it instead of trying to figure out how you fit in here. So if we have kids with ADHD, and I want to say, like, my kid is not like your classic person she was just like me. Like, she would fly under the radar for 40 years if I wasn't saying to people, like, pay attention to her inattention, pay attention to what's going on here. So I think sometimes it's okay to say we don't have to have a reason to feel how we feel, and to just sit with our kids through their feelings instead of looking for reasons and so we can solve the problem of the feeling. Rather, we feel with them, and maybe we help them shake out the feeling, but with the ideology that this is your feeling, it's here for you, and we have to get more comfortable in feeling it instead of figuring out what the reason that you feel it is and then eradicating the reason. Because to an ADHD person, that can make us spiral and have lots of reasons, and then the outer world feels insanely conflictual because we have this idea based on probably people like me put it into somebody's head, like, oh, it must be something in the outer world. And yes, you have to experience a good petri dish for yourself in life, but sometimes I have learned the inner world has its own cascade, its own time. And if we try to find a pointed reason for that instead of pay attention to the pattern over time and just see the cycle and prep for it, if we try to look for reasons all the time, I think it's fair to say that we might be setting our kid up to be blamey to the outside world and then victimy. And so that's why I love when my daughter came to me and she said, Mommy, I like have to cry, but I don't even know why. Like, I'm not like really sad. I don't have a reason. And I was like, that's insightful. I love that you're saying this. And let's cry without that reason. Because your body's doing it. You're in process. And yeah, allowing for process instead of trying to find reasons for the timeline of the process, I think really helps, in our case, just really hone it into like, this is you here, and it's safe to feel this. We don't need to dig for why the feeling's here so that we can eradicate the feeling. I will stay here with you when you feel it, or I will help you discharge when you're clearly saying you need a discharge. So sometimes I think we can just insert reasons, and then that becomes an excuse later on. But it's so embedded in the psyche at that point that it wouldn't even, that's a slow process of imprinting, right? So I just don't want to do that to my kid, and I realized that it was very possible, given her energetic and psychological constitution. So hopefully this helps you understand maybe your own kid. All right, have a great day. Bye.